Welcome to the Navseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 90 of the Navseam podcast. My name is Dr. Jeff Winkle. I'm here in the vomitorium, as always, with my co-host and good friend, Dr. David Noe. How you feeling, Dave?
I'm feeling odd. Let me say that.
Odd.
Yes.
Okay.
I was listening to a podcast recently.
Yes.
And the individual being interviewed said, I am super excited. Oh, I'm super excited to interview so-and-so. Mm-hmm. And the interviewee, guess what he said?
What did he say?
He was super excited to be interviewed.
It's a lot of excitement.
There was excitement all over the landscape.
Yeah.
And I thought, that is not the podcast I want to listen to or deliver.
Did you shut it down immediately after that?
No, I listened to it because I was interested in the topic.
Yeah.
But there was no excitement.
There wasn't?
No, I mean, on my part,
Yeah.
they were feigning excitement.
So no actual enthusisim?
No, not really. It was an interesting topic, but
Okay.
everyone was super excited.
All right.
How are you feeling, Jeff? Super excited?
Not now. Not anymore. I'm feeling good. You know, we're back in the vomitorium after a little bit of time away.
Yes, it's been a hiatus,
Yes.
to use a Greek word. 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yep. So I am a little bit excited to be back in
Okay,
here.
a
But
little excited.
back from a long road trip with my family, which was great.
Yes.
But it was not necessarily relaxing.
This isn't excessive banter yet, is it?
I don't know exactly. We'll leave that for other people to decide.
You know how I threw in that word hiatus?
Yeah.
And I said to use the Greek?
Yes.
That was deliberate misdirection.
It was?
It's not a Greek word. It's a Latin word.
No. Why did you?
I was trying to see if anybody's paying attention.
I think you got it wrong, and now you're correcting yourself.
I was hoping for some hate mail, someone to, pedantically write in and say, Dr. Noe, hiatus is not a Greek word; it's actually a Latin word.
So you're just kind of stepping up. You're getting in people's faces.
That's
now.
right. I'll be the pedant tonight.
So you're not feeling excited or enthusiastic. You're feeling pedantic.
Pedantic.
Okay.
That's
All
right.
All right. Yeah.
But you were on a nice trip with your family.
It was.
You went down and you saw the grave site of Colonel Sanders, Harlan Sanders.
Exactly. I don't want to mislead the audience in saying that was the goal.
It would be for me.
We drove out of town to find the founder of KFC's grave.
Yeah. So to be only a little irreverent,
Yes.
Is he buried in a large white and red striped cardboard bucket?
If only. He has a fairly sizable, ornate grave. It's kind of a creepy bronze statue of his head
With a side of coleslaw?
The fact that he founded KFC is engraved on the tombstone.
It's a man I admire greatly.
Yeah. Well, part of the reason for the trip was I'm studying, very interested in urban legends.
Yes, that's right.
And I'm very interested in kind of how people interact with kind of sacred places, spooky places, liminal spaces. And so I wanted to visit Bridginess. I wanted to visit a number of famous graves along the way to see how people pay homage.
So I'm thinking you got your university institution to pay for this.
They did pick up part of the tab.
I
That's
see.
exactly
It
right.
was a junket.
It was a junket. Yeah.
It was a Kentucky Fried Junket.
Yeah. So we went in search of Warlock Willie in Ann Arbor. The Pope-Lick Goat Man in Louisville.
Don't know that one.
Yeah. They're fairly obscure, but fascinating to visit these places. And then in the same cemetery that Colonel Sanders is buried, Muhammad Ali is there.
Oh, yeah.
And we went to a cemetery.
Did you know he lived nearby here? Berrien Springs, Michigan.
Did he really?
Yes, about an hour and a half.
Towards the end of his life?
Last 20 years of his life, he lived in Berrien Springs.
What was he doing there?
I don't know. He was retiring.
Okay. He's originally from Louisville. He grew up, Cassius Clay there. And so
Right.
still his name is all over that town, and he left a lot of money in foundations back there.
Yeah.
So I think that made sense that his body would go back there.
Right.
His grave has a little receptacle, kind of almost as if people are saying, "Yeah, we expect you to leave tokens behind."
Interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. So, saw the Wright brothers' grave in Dayton, and dragged my children to all these historical places. It was fascinating.
Yeah, you went on a cemetery tour with your kids.
Yes.
So no theme parks.
Nope.
No. Did you buy them ice cream or eat any junk food, or was just one cemetery?
Way too much junk food and ice cream along the way. But
okay.
we did some spelunking.
All right.
Took them to Elvis's house, Graceland, which is people leave all kinds of stuff behind and right on the walls. And,
right.
And the Civil Rights Museum, where Martin Luther King was assassinated, and the balcony is still kind of frozen. As
incredible.
It was. So it was a lot of the stuff we did was kind of fell under the banner of pilgrimage. which I found endlessly fascinating, and that my kids got into it too, and my wife enjoyed it, so it was successful.
And I understand on the way back, it was the lovely Mrs. Winkle who insisted that you stop at the concrete Parthenon.
We did. We stopped at the concrete cement Parthenon in Nashville. I note a little hint of dismissiveness there.
No, it's envy. I've never seen it.
You've never seen it? Okay.
I've lectured on it extensively.
Yeah.
And I've been through Nashville more times than I can count.
Why haven't you stopped?
I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's really impressive. It's great.
The dismissive tone is toward the American aesthetic.
I see.
It's not toward the object.
Gotcha.
I'm proud to be an American. I'm glad to be an American.
Yeah.
But the concrete Parthenon is quintessentially American.
Yeah.
Right? Let's make something fantastic, but let's make it cheap.
Let's make it cheap. Yeah.
We're such a pragmatic people.
Totally. And I mean, so the building itself is a little over, I think maybe 110 years old. It's already fallen apart.
No surprise.
They have nets up at the corners catching the falling crumbling pieces. But
right.
as a monument, as a kind of 1-to-1 scale replica, it's impressive.
Right.
And now they have inside the full scale 40-foot statue of Athena, which for a small fee you can go inside and look at. And so it's a way to experience that building that you simply can't in Athens, right?
No, the contrast here for me is with the Duomo in Florence, right? Because it was built and it stood without a dome for more than 100 years.
Yeah.
They said, we want to make this massive structure, but as to how to enclose it, no idea. Let's just build the first part of it.
Right.
Completely unpragmatic.
Unpragmatic, but so confident.
Exactly.
They say, okay, we don't know how to cover this now, but we will.
We'll figure it out.
And then along comes Brunelleschi, right?
That's right. Call back to Ross King, right?
Ross King, exactly. So I like that. I like that comparison. But you're right. The Nashville Parthenon, it's at a glance, that's very Greek, right? But it's also deeply American.
Very pragmatic. The other thing that's interesting to me about it is Nashville apparently wants to be the Athens of the South.
That's one of its nicknames.
Exactly.
Right.
And if I were Athens, Georgia, what's left to me then, right?
Athens, Georgia. I mean, also a college town,
right?
Right.
What are they going to be? The Nashville of Georgia?
I don't know. Well, I mean, they're famous for a lot of great bands came out of it.
Yes, that's right.
REM. And,
bands anyway.
What's that?
Bands anyway came out of there.
Yes, bands.
I removed the adjective.
Okay.
So let's talk classics.
Let's talk classics, right? Well, we have been a little bit, but let's
You're right.
Yeah. We need our shout out though. Right? Before we dive into this.
And this fellow sent us a tome. For us, it's kind of, what's that expression where it's either, feast or famine. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. It's probably Shakespearean. For us, it's either feast or famine.
Right.
We either got no shout out or we have huge, cumbersome shout out.
Exactly. And he kind of took us to task.
He did. So let's read it.
All right. Yeah. So
let's not reveal his name until the end so that the sense of shame can build.
Right. So he starts out. In a few recent episodes, I was surprised to hear there was no shout out. I confess I was reminded of the Seinfeld episode. Okay, he knows how to butter us up.
He's trying to get to us, right?
Exactly, right.
Pluck our heartstrings.
Reminded of the Seinfeld episode where George wouldn't date a woman because she was balding, him being bald, or the one where Jerry finds out Newman dumped the beautiful woman Jerry is dating because she wasn't his type. So what's he trying to say here?
I don't quite get that part, but let's stick with it.
Okay, all right. So he's explaining himself.
Like you're saying, he's trying to butter us up.
Right. That is to say, I was a little surprised that a pun, a Tolkien quote, a reference to my liberal arts alma mater, and a Latin staple from the Reformation were insufficient to get a nod from the vomitorium.
Well, apparently he sent us all these things.
Yeah.
And we completely forgot about them.
Well, okay, I guess bad on us, I suppose.
Mostly on you?
I guess I'll take the blame here.
Yeah, mostly on me.
It says, truth be told, I typically err on the side of brevity.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, exactly. This goes on for pages. As I try to avoid being a me monster.
Are you glad that I put it in a 3-ring binder? So
exactly.
Carried it to the vomitorium for you?
Exactly. I mean, I had to lug that thing down the stairs. Right? That being said, I can add that I was a history teacher who now, for better or worse, sells industrial components.
I hope it's for better.
I hope so.
Who wants to buy a bad industrial component?
No, exactly.
And they would be hard to sell, wouldn't they?
That's quite a left turn, though, in terms of career switches.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
He says, may I continue?
Yeah, please do.
I taught 4 years in Christian schools, with Western Civ being my favorite class to teach. The Battle of Thermopylae was definitely a huge hit. Shall we pause here? Lion at the Gates, episodes 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Way back around the 20s,
Do you think
that.
did this guy listen to this?
I doubt it, but I want other people too, and that's the point.
Right.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Over the semester, I required my students to engage in a set number of civilizing activities, e.g. attend a play, listen to a symphony, eat a bucket of fried chicken. No, I guess I just added that part in. And that ad nauseam had existed at the time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
On a personal note, I regularly sing the Beatitudes in Latin to my children in Gregorian chant.
Wow.
This guy does it all. Suffice it to say, I am very thankful for ad nauseam's weekly offering of the humanities. I believe the recent episodes on Virgil have been some of the best on the podcast. Oh, interesting.
Great.
You want to continue on there?
Sure. He says, the ample supply of Latin and English readings have been really enjoyable. However, I do count myself among the few, the not-so-happy few, who listened to the Troy episode. So as regards a shout-out, like humble Priam beseeching the body of Hector, I make my appeal.
Hold on now. Should we reveal his name?
Okay, let's do it.
Grant, Priam did not beseech the body of Hector.
That's right.
The body of Hector was dead. I warned you I would be pedantic tonight.
Oh, man, okay, all right.
All right. He beseeched Achilles for the body of Hector.
Yes, all right. Yeah, he didn't directly address the body itself. Right? No, Grant. Come on, Grant. Right.
Okay.
Like the importunate widow, I plead my case.
See, scriptural reference. Guy's just dropping them everywhere.
He's laying it on thick here. It doesn't end.
No.
Like the bold Syrophoenician woman, I retort that even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the ad nauseam table.
Oh, nicely done. Well, he put a lot of work into this.
He did, yeah. Nice. So I tip my cap.
Yes. And then he concludes with this valediction. Yeah. Soli Deo Gloria, a little bit of Latin. Grant Hayden. P.S. This is the P.S. de la Resistance. Yeah. Bring back the brackish tang.
That's the part that really made you happy, right?
I love that. We need to get that put on a T-shirt.
Bring back the brackish tang?
That's correct.
Yeah, exactly.
2 scoops stirred into some water, and you got it right there. That's brackish tang.
That's right. Now, he says bring it back, but I feel like it never really went away.
Well,
have we kind of left it
We
aside?
made jokes about not talking about it, but then we always talked about it.
We talk about it by not talking. We don't talk about it by talking about it.
As is our want.
Yes. Whoa, okay, that was a long introduction.
Yes.
But
you took us all the way to Athens, Georgia, and back.
And to the Athens of the South.
That's correct.
That's right. So it was. I mean, we're in the classical field, so I don't feel too bad.
We apologize to no one, Winkle.
Right. All right. So we're talking about we're back into the Aeneid.
Yes.
Tonight, and we're starting what I think is arguably the most famous
part,
book 4. The romance, the dark tragic romance of the epic.
And what goes better with dark tragic romance than popcorn?
Popcorn. All right, let's talk a little popcorn before we dive into the subject.
That's
tonight.
correct.
Yeah.
So Pop City Popcorn is our newest sponsor. They're located in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And popcitypopcorn.com, that's where you want to go, popcitypopcorn.com. Check out their large selection of delicious popcorns.
Right.
They've got the 2-way drizzle. They've got the rainbow, which, as the name implies, is just a beautiful array of colors. It's a sweet popcorn. I'm more of a savory guy. I like the bacon cheddar. I like the Parmesan. Nothing on the popcorn is powder. It's all real grated cheese. Fantastically delicious.
Yeah, everything I've tried from them has been great. I imagine there's a lot of people out there like me who think, hey, what's popcorn is popcorn.
I can make popcorn at home, they might say.
Or I can even buy that fancy box of the bow-tied guy.
Yes,
right?
The Jacker Crack.
The Jacker Cracks and make it home. So why do I need to do this? And I was kind of that mindset too. And this stuff was amazing.
Yep.
It's a cut above. It's if you love popcorn, this takes it to the next level.
That's right.
Yeah, like Dave was saying, the sweet side, the savory side, they have it all. Go to popcitypopcorn.com, check out their offerings, and sample some.
That's right. And if you enter this coupon code ANPOP20, ANPOP20, you'll get 20% off your first order.
It's a great deal.
Check it out.
All right, Dave, you have our opening quote tonight, I believe.
That's correct. So tonight's opening quote comes from a book we've referred to before. This is the book by Brooks Otis, Virgil, A Study in Civilized Poetry, published by the University of Oklahoma Press, 1964.
Would you say that if you were to suggest to the audience you're going to pick one book about the Aeneid, about Virgil, is it the Otis book that you would nod towards? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
It's revolutionary, the best book on the Aeneid written in the 20th century.
Okay.
No doubt. Other books that are worth considering is William Anderson, Art of the Aeneid, a much slimmer volume, but some really keen insights in there.
Okay.
And then, of course, our buddy Conte, Jean Biagio Conte. It's just a handbook of Latin literature, but his insights are equally startling and significant.
Fantastic. Well, give us Otis's quote here.
Okay, so this comes from page 265. The narrative of books 2 and 3 has shown to Dido and to us the nature of Aeneas's destiny and the consequent impossibility of his denying it. But it has also shown the dolor and furor, the pain and anger, the black despair, the absence of initiative, the dependence on Anchises, that together made Aeneas so exceedingly vulnerable to all that Dido represented. Book 4, however, seems at first only to carry on the emphasis on Dido, the empathetic identification with Dido that had already been established at the end of Book 1. Remember, at the end of the banquet scene.
Right.
But the long narrative had intervened, and it is therefore with some sense of shock that we turn from the Aeneas of Books 2 and 3 to the Dido of the first line of Book 4. And this is the At regina grui iam dudum sauci acura, which we're going to talk about, which basically means that she, that is Dido, was nursing this heavy care deep within her heart.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as I was reading Book 4, I mean, one of the things that struck me, again, is this kind of these almost sometimes like casually brushing aside this notion of this this fate that must come true.
Right.
So I think we can forgive Dido a little bit. I mean, she's not clued into this, but from Aeneas' point of view, like Otis was saying in Books 2 and 3, this idea that this fate of that Aeneas must reach Italy is, it's come from the mouths of so many different people, different oracles, different signs, different omens. But suddenly that seems to be kind of goes all out the window,
right?
Because Dido is love struck.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then Otis goes on. I'm just going to summarize real quickly. Why indeed is the emphasis of Book 4 so wholly, so almost exclusively on Dido and her tragedy? Why does Aeneas display such scant initiative? Give so much the impression of a man driven by forces outside himself? We can make two answers, which in a final analysis amount to the same thing. The first one, Dido is obviously an alter Aeneas.
Okay.
That's the first one. We can unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
The second one is, there is another and more fundamental reason for Dido's prominence and Aeneas's passivity. It is that Aeneas's absence of initiative in the book is itself a revelation of his moral failure, of his culpa. He is caught and temporarily lost in the tempestuous passion of Dido and in his own passion for her. In this sense, the book's domination by Dido is a clear index of Aeneas's weakness.
That's really interesting. I find that very persuasive. I mean, we've talked in the previous episodes of Aeneas's passivity. He's a maddening hero type because under this burden of fate, he can't really make a move, so to speak.
That's right.
And so in Book 4, where he more or less in many ways just kind of disappears.
Yes.
I mean, he's fundamental to the narrative. He has to be there.
Right.
But
he doesn't drive the action in any way.
Exactly right. And so in some ways, this just draws a thick underline of Aeneas' kind of lack of heroism.
That's right.
Now you could explain it as, I think, as a moral failure. But you could also kind of explain it like he's a plaything.
Yes. Well, this is one of the reasons why I think people don't like the character of Aeneas as opposed to, say, Odysseus. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure it's a fair analysis. And I think Otis has put his finger on something, and that is, in order to make this transition in Aeneas' life plausible, Dido has to take the initiative and has to take the lead in Book 4. So Aeneas has to recede into the background somewhat as a character.
Yeah.
And this is how Dido is an alter Aeneas, right? She is a second Aeneas. She has already set up the civilization on the shores of the Mediterranean there in Carthage. She is more manly in a sense, according to traditional heroic archetypes. Mm-hmm. She's driving and building this civilization. She has spurned suitors, like Iarbas all over Africa.
Yeah.
She is the one that you're drawn to naturally for heroism in that book. And it's her downfall that spurs Aeneas on to do what he's supposed to do. Right.
And I think that, very well said. And I think that in some part, Dido belongs to a Roman tradition. In some ways, she reminds me of kind of a Lucretia.
Exactly.
Right. Kind of a heroic, but also kind of suicidal.
Right.
A female character.
Yes. Monomaniacal. She's totally obsessed.
Right. In which we don't see there's not kind of a clear corollary in the Greek corpus. I mean, there's something very Roman about Dido.
That's true. Yeah. Although you're right, but many scholars have pointed out that Book 4 is Virgil's opportunity to have a mini tragedy. He's drawing on the motifs and emphases of Euripides especially. And so you're going to write an epic, but he sneaks a tragedy in there.
I see
book
that.
4.
Yeah, so I mean, there's
Dido has some of those reminiscences.
There's a Medea there,
correct?
And I mean, even Sophoclean. I mean, there's parts of Antigone,
right,
in her as well. Okay, yeah.
But not to anticipate the end of the book. Spoiler alert! I think everybody knows. Does everyone know that Dido commits suicide?
Well, now they do now.
Okay. She does so in a very un-Greek fashion because all of the Greek women, Phaedra, right, in the Hippolytus, and of course Jocasta, and of course Antigone, hanging. Right. And so the mode that Dido chooses to fall on her lover's sword, this is not Greek. This is Roman.
It's a soldier's death.
Exactly.
Right? It's how Antony died.
Yes, it's how Cato the Younger killed himself, falling on a sword.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many kind of interesting kind of playing with archetypes and expectations. And as I was rereading book 4, I mean, a question that kept popping back in my mind is like, how would a Roman audience have read this, right?
Yeah, I think I'm speculating here, but I imagine they would, of course, have been drawn to the character of Dido, but with a really strong love-hate relationship.
Yes.
This is our arch enemy, right? These Carthaginians, these are the people we beat up in 3 wars, and now Virgil, Augustus's poet, is making her into the heroine.
Right.
And the guy that we admire, Aeneas, he's, a milquetoast.
He's doing nothing.
He's so
a
much
wallflower.
He's so much in the background.
Right. That in and of itself, I find fascinating. I mean, one thing I was thinking about, that I think I know that I think back in 9th grade we were reading there was anthology of ancient readings in my mythology class, and I remember reading kind of a watered down version of book 4. And I was thinking, well, why is that book? If there's going to be an excerpt from the Aeneid, it's almost always this book and then nothing else. And I think a lot of it has to do with the romance of it, right? I mean, there's the tragic romance of it. There's aspects of what happens between Aeneas and Dido that I think are all over Disney films,
right?
And it got me to thinking of that. That I think Virgil I think he does it very well. He's his finger on kind of how. I'm going to get in trouble here, but broadly speaking, women behaving in these kinds of situations and men behaving in these kinds of situations, and
you're in trouble, Winkle.
I know. I'm going full steam with it. But
all right.
Women, broadly speaking, kind of following their emotions, leading with their emotions, and men leading with more kind of a black and white cost benefit analysis.
Okay.
Right?
Even in romance,
right?
Huh. So you want to get a lot of hate mail.
I do exactly.
Okay.
I'm taking the baton from you.
All right.
You wanted the beginning. I want it now too. So I wondered if would a Roman have recognized that kind of romantic aspect in the same way that someone primed by watching Disney films would recognize. And I don't know if there's I'm just I'm thinking aloud here because I wonder, okay, would a Roman audience have kind of picked up on kind of that romanticism in the same way that we would today?
It might be similar. I'm reminded of the Duke's Femina Facti quote, which is from this book, right? Or maybe it was in book 1.
It was book 1, yeah.
A woman was in charge of the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Right? She was in charge of the whole operation. So there is a sense of Dido stands out among women. She, violates a typical gender role, you might say.
Yeah.
Something else that strikes me when we're talking about pop culture, I was trying to think of an analogy for this effect it would have on the Roman reader to see this romance between Aeneas and Dido. And I remember the amount of literature that I read as a child about the Native Americans or the Indians, and how fascinating I found their cultures. I studied the different tribes here in Michigan and the Sioux and in the New England states. I read all that stuff.
Yeah.
And at one time, of course, they were presented as subhuman at one point in the history of this country. At other times, though, they have been treated like the noble savage.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Something very much out of Herodotus.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is that people unaffected by culture and civilization have a nobility and an honesty that the civilized don't.
Exactly.
So that's what I was drawn to, right? So I'm thinking, how would a story like Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull at the Battle of
Little Bighorn,
right, with Custer, right? So the end of that story is the underdog. It's not the case there that the victors write history, because all of the sympathy really is now on the other side.
Right.
It's not for Custer. I don't know anyone, even those who might say, well, it was a necessary military operation. There's no sympathy in it.
Right.
It's all on the side of those who were eventually the losers, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But what Virgil is doing seems somewhat different because all of your sympathies are drawn toward Dido, and then she loses and she's pretty much out of the story.
It's done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She makes a brief cameo in
the underworld.
Book 6.
Right.
But I think that's kind of what's unsatisfying or dissatisfying to the reader. Dido is so built up as this better and larger than life character, better than Aeneas, and then she dies and the story goes on like it was supposed to.
Yeah.
It's very different.
It's like a twist ending that kind of causes the audience to kind of jerk their head around and say, wait, what just happened?
Right.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time developing that Native American analogy. Does that land at all? Did that make any sense?
Yeah. Broadly speaking, that's something I'm fascinated with too. Is if you look at when I teach my film class, we talk about the development of the Western.
Right.
And in the earliest Western, the cowboys are the heroes of civilization to tame the savage.
Right.
And then somewhere along the 50s and 60s, you get the flip, and it kind of culminates in like Dances with Wolves, or even a film like Avatar, where the forces of civilizations are there to plunder and to mine and to make money. And it's the forces that are closer to nature that are inherently spiritual, or inherently good.
And that's a really old archetype. Like I mentioned Herodotus.
Yes.
It goes back to the notion of the noble savage.
Yes. Yeah.
I think the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle.
As it usually does.
Yeah, there were, so to speak, good guys and bad guys on both sides.
Right.
But I think then the Roman audience, is Aeneas the good guy? Is Dido the bad guy, so to speak?
Right. I know. I think Virgil, to his credit, he leaves so much of that kind of stuff on the knife edge, and I think so it makes it so interesting. Another thing I thought of too is that given when Virgil is writing, you have a kind of proto-Roman, kind of flirting with a foreign queen. They had people have to see Cleopatra.
Of course,
right?
This is Antony and Cleopatra.
Antony and Cleopatra, right?
100%.
Mm-hmm. And so that had to be another layer, which again makes it even more complicated. You could take that in a whole other direction too. And okay, what's he trying to say politically?
Right. Well, because Aeneas was traipsing around Carthage with a purple cloak on, right?
Yeah.
Just like the reports of Antony was, lounging around the court in Alexandria in full velvet, right? Dressed in full velvet. Or was it velour?
Velour. And I think he said something like, if it were socially acceptable, he would drape himself.
I would drape myself. That's right. That was Mark Antony. So, so Aeneas is the Eastern dandy who's been taken in by this troubling queen, this foreign queen.
Right. And even in this book, when I'm getting ahead of things, but when Mercury comes down to basically say, hey, you can't stay here, you got to move on, he finds him building Dido's towers. Someone else's city. He's wearing a Carthaginian cloak that she gave him. Yes. He's gone native.
Yeah, he's got the T-shirt that says, "I'm with stupid," right?
Exactly right.
Come on, snap out of it. Get back to work.
Right.
That's what Mercury is saying.
Yeah, exactly. All right, now, I don't want to patronize the audience, but just in case,
I'm willing to do that.
There are some more newbies that are listening to this. Of course, part of the larger scheme that Virgil is up to is he's setting up the enmity between Rome and Carthage. Right?
Correct.
This sets up what the tragedy that happens between Aeneas and Dido lies in the background of Hannibal.
Three world wars.
Right?
That consumed the Mediterranean.
Right. And which makes it even the more striking, given that the book also gins up so much sympathy for Dido. You would think that on some level you would think, okay, Virgil's got to make these people monsters, right? To justify what the Romans had to do with them, but he does not do that.
A very sympathetic portrayal,
right?
And of course, since you patronized the audience, and I said I was willing to, let me do that a little bit too.
Go for it.
All right, so we're talking about these three world wars between Rome and her allies and Carthage and her allies. Mm-hmm. So this was the first Punic War, started in 264 BC. Then the second one is the Hannibalic, 219. I think it ended about 202, 204, 202, with the Battle of Zama, right? With Scipio Africanus in North Africa.
Yep.
And then the third one, this is the Carthage Must Be Destroyed of Cato the Elder. Mm-hmm. Started in 149. Poor Cato was already dead.
Yeah.
He didn't really get to see Carthage destroyed, all his hopes. 149 and ended in 146.
Okay.
So very short.
Kind of reminds me of the Godfather trilogy to some degree.
It is like that.
Yeah.
And I think we've said before, no movie has ever been made on these three massively interesting events.
Are you sure about that?
Relatively. In fact, grandfathers who fought in the First Punic War, their grandsons fought in the third one. It was a 3-generational conflict spanning all of the Western Mediterranean and some of the Eastern.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The stories in it are incredible.
Incredible, yeah.
Hannibal? Remember we were talking that Vin Diesel was going to play Hannibal at one point?
Yes. That'd be perfect.
I don't know.
You don't think so?
Well, the Fast and Furious on an elephant?
It would definitely be kind of a flighty action version of this, which I have no problem with.
I have no problem either.
Have I told you about the when I lived in Chicago, the Bud Light mirror that featured Hannibal?
No.
So when I would walk to catch the bus, there was like this junk shop, and featured in the window there was kind of this these mirrors with kind of a pasted picture on the front of it.
Okay, so you're supposed to look into it and see yourself?
Kind of like that. It was just a really hokey, cheesy kind of thing.
Right.
But this was from a series of Bud Light salutes like great men of history. and I should have got this because it said Bud Light salutes great African Americans.
Oh no.
Hannibal of Carthage. And the picture could not have been worse. It was like it was a sub-Saharan African with the bones in the nose.
Not Hannibal.
No, it was.
That is really awful.
It was awful, and I kicked myself for not buying that stupid thing.
Very tasteless and
beyond tasteless.
Could you laugh at it?
I just every time I saw it, I just shook my head because it was so ridiculous.
That's incredible.
Yeah. But back to Carthage and Dido and Aeneas. All right. So at the opening lines, we learn that Dido she's fallen for this guy, head over heels, and Virgil uses the language of sickness, of being wounded.
Of course, the most famous epic simile is the wounded doe that wanders through the city with the arrow struck from afar.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have time in this episode to talk about it, but we will be addressing that at some point.
Absolutely.
But at the very beginning, Dido is she's love struck. She's hurting. She's completely overwhelmed in the presence of this guy, and a lot of time is spent. Virgil spends a lot of lines talking about how Dido is. She said, "I swore never to marry again."
Correct.
Given what happened with her first husband,
Sychaeus.
right? And which
murdered by her brother Pygmalion.
Right, which we talked about. I think in the first episode.
That's right.
of the Aeneas, but not just that, but. Talks about how she swore this on the powers of the underworld, right? I mean, this is a serious vow.
The ashes of her dead husband.
Right. It doesn't get more serious than that. And if we remember that, and one of the things that we've talked about a lot in these last episodes is this focus on being religiously correct, doing the right rituals, doing right by the gods, and respecting those powers. So this is not just some kind of...
It's a great point.
And it's not something that we can take lightly.
And you had a certain sense of irritation with Aeneas. Do you have to perform a sacrifice every 100 yards? Can't we get the show on the road?
Exactly. It got to be a little much.
Tedious.
But it does underline, I think, a very important thread throughout the epic here. And so when Dido is saying, I know I swore that I would never marry again, but this guy, it's not just, I think that's where you have to kind of set aside the Disney romance and say, no, a Roman would say, this is serious business.
Correct.
You don't break these kind of vows, right? But it's her sister Anna that comes to her and says, "Listen, what do the dead care? Why would the dead be worried about this?" She
provides a plausible justification, for Dido to do what she already wanted to do.
Right. And it leads me to start to think: does Dido really have agency in this episode? Does she really make the choice that she does, or is she just again like an alter Aeneas? Is she also kind of just a puppet in the hands of fate? Of Juno also. Right. But let's read some Latin. You want to read some Latin here?
Yeah,
and I'll give the Lombardo translation.
That'd be excellent. I'll start out in line 9. Annas aurora quae me suspensa insomnia terrent, quis novus hic nostri succesit sedibus hospes, quem se sordra ferens quam forti pectorat armis, cred equidem nec vana fides genesessa de ordrum, de generes animos timor arguit hell quibus illa, iacta tus fatis quae bell exhausta canebat.
Very nice. You always read that so nicely.
Oh, you're very kind. Yes. I enjoy it so much. It's maybe the most beautiful, other than Greek, maybe the most beautiful poetry ever written.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So Lombardo translates that, and I'll read a little bit beyond that just to give a bigger picture. This is Dido speaking. He says, Anna, my nightmares would not let me sleep. This guest who has come to our house, his looks, the way he carries himself, his brave heart, He has to be descended from the gods. Fear always gives away men of inferior birth. What the fates have put him through at sea, the wars he painted, fought to the bitter end. If I were not unshakable in my vow never to pledge myself in marriage again after death stole my first love away, if the mere thought of marriage did not leave me cold, I might perhaps have succumbed this once. And I must confess, since my husband, poor Zacchaeus, fell at my brother's hands and stained our household gods with blood, only this man has turned my eye. Only he has caused my heart to falter. So she's wrestling with this.
Correct.
And I think that the subtext here, and we learned later the details of it, a lot of guys have stepped up and saying and wanted to
courted her,
right? So there's a bit of kind of Penelope in her as well.
Absolutely,
right?
She's a reverse Penelope.
Yeah, she is a reverse Penelope, and so it seems to suggest that lots of guys have come to offer marriage, and she hasn't given them the time of day.
Nope.
But Aeneas is the one guy who has kind of made her think differently.
Yes, only this man has turned my eye. Mm-hmm. Only he has caused my heart to falter.
Right. Now it's Aeneas in his passivity, he hasn't really done anything.
No.
But he's told a very interesting story.
That's correct. Right? Of his heritage, his lineage. He's good looking.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of reverse Penelopes,
yes,
it's time for the ads.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Ratio Coffee, these the makers of these wonderful machines that we both Dave and I have. I can't say enough about them. I used my Ratio 8 this morning.
Yes.
And it was great. I have the hand-blown borosilicate carafe.
That's right.
Which pours like nothing I've ever poured from before.
That's right.
Just even pouring the coffee is an act of art. Even my
gravity assisted.
Gravity assisted. Yeah. Even my wife, who's not generally impressed by that kind of stuff, she's very taken with this machine. What do you like about your Ratio?
Well, I didn't actually get to use it this morning.
What?
No, I didn't. The schedule, the time, maybe that's why I've been a little bit off. I didn't get my Ratio 8 ritual, and so I went and had coffee somewhere else.
Oh, man.
Don't tell Mark Helweg.
Were you at the Blarstucks again?
No, but I used one of those L cups. I think it's called one of those L cups.
L cup?
It's a little plastic dingy thing, and you stick it in the top, and you pull the lever down.
Oh, yeah.
The light comes up, and you wait, and
I gotcha.
Cheapo, right? I was not impressed. Maybe that set my whole day off.
I think we've pinpointed
That's it.
Yeah.
But my Ratio 8, sitting lonely at home on the counter with its oyster color steel aluminum and its walnut accents,
yes,
was waiting for me when I got back.
That made you feel a little bit better.
Yes,
right?
It did.
Yeah.
It's a work of art. It's a beautiful thing.
Right.
And winning awards all over the landscape. This is a really highly rated. You can look in Wired. You can look in the New York Times. The first place I found it was I was reading the Wall Street Journal. This was spring of 2019, I think. And I saw Ratio 8, top 10 all-time luxury coffee makers. And I said, wait a minute, I know the guy who made that. That's my friend Mark. And I contacted him and I said, you're in the Wall Street Journal.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And since then, it's just been all great coffee. So.
Yeah. Yes. So the Ratio 8, there's also the Ratio 6, which is also a slightly less expensive machine, but still...
I think more attainable is the term.
More attainable.
Right.
Yeah, which is a fantastic machine. I had it at one point. I had the weighty carafe that keeps the coffee warm for hours without the scorch pad underneath.
The Kindle brick.
Yeah, the Kindle brick.
You had the aluminum, right?
Yep, I had the aluminum.
But it also comes, or the stainless steel, I mean to say.
Stainless steel, right.
Also comes in a black and a white. So 3 colors for the Ratio 6. The Ratio 8... There's a huge number of options.
Right. So, listener, if you're interested in this, go to ratiocoffee.com. Take a look at their machines, and if you choose one, you can type in the code ANCOA4, and they will get
15% off.
Either the 6 or the 8.
Either the 6 or the 8. And now you might say, "Come on, guys, I priced that coffee machine. It's not that attainable." Well, I understand, right? But if you're drinking coffee every day and you're paying $5.50 to $7.50 at Barstucks or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
Put this at home, and it's going to really pay for itself because the quality of the coffee is higher, and you'll never buy another machine again.
That's very true. Yep. So this code ANCOA4 will be good through the end of July, and queue one up and get yourself 15% off.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is also brought to you, good folks, by Hackett Publishing. Hackett has offices in Cambridge, Ma. and Indianapolis Inn, and they have been publishing high-quality classics translations for 50 years now. This is their anniversary.
50 years this year.
This year, yes, the quinquagesimal year.
Yep, fantastic. I've loved Hackett Publishing. I've used their books for years. I was using their books even before I really knew they were from Hackett Publishing.
Right. I was as well.
Right. There would be those things that would kind of show up in your mailbox.
That's right.
And say, hey, consider this. Yeah.
I studied from their translation of Descartes' Meditations when I was an undergrad, and then I got to teach from it. It's a thin volume, inexpensive, high-quality scholarship in that thing, and that's just one example of many.
Yeah. I love the artwork and the layout. You know, I was mentioning my road trip earlier, and so I was at Graceland, right?
Oh, yes.
The home of Elvis Presley.
Yes.
And I could not help but be reminded of the picture of Elvis on the front of the translation of Euripides' Bacchae.
Right.
And that wonderful corollary of Dionysus, the guy who shows up in town and drives all the women mad. Just
Correct.
like Elvis in 1954.
That's right.
Right.
And sometimes mayhem ensues.
Yes, absolutely.
As it did for Elvis.
Right.
So much good stuff. I like the CDC Reeve translation of Plato's Republic. They got a new Aristotle series. And it's not just classics. If you like Latin American studies, Asian studies, they have Norse studies. They got a star in that area who's publishing a lot of stuff. And we're just tonight using Stanley Lombardo's translation. And it's excellent.
It is really good.
I am a really picky reader of literature and translating and so forth. And there was one phrase in there, something like nec space wana or something like that. It was not a vain hope. Mm-hmm. And Lombardo handled that perfectly, in my estimation.
Yeah. So if you're interested in this translation we've been using for these on this last number of episodes, check it out.
Yes.
It's worth picking this up.
Go to hackettpublishing.com, HACKETT publishing.com. Browse around, drop some things in your grocery basket next to your carrots and chopped tomatoes. Mm-hmm. And then at checkout, you will get 20% off and free shipping.
If you type in the code AN2022.
AN2022. Last year, the code was AN2021. Who knows what it will be next year?
We're going to keep that a mystery.
That's right.
That's right.
So, Jeff, as we get back into it, it looks like we are actually going to get to this very famous epic simile of Dido struck by the arrow of love, you might say, like a doe.
Right. Do you want to jump right there?
Well, I think we should say how Juno is the goddess of marriage, and she really arranges this relationship. The listener shouldn't forget the tie between Juno and Venus earlier in the epic.
Right.
They made this pact. They had different motives, different goals, but they used the same means to try to get them.
Right.
So Venus wants to get Aeneas to Italy and to fulfill his fate as Jupiter has promised, and Juno wants the opposite.
Right.
She doesn't want him to get there.
Exactly. And I thought one of the most interesting things about Juno's role in Book 4 is that she uses the language of marriage, right? She's going to get Aeneas and Dido together, and by doing so, she's going to keep Aeneas away from Italy, right? But she uses the language of marriage, but she acts in such a very Venus-like way. She's kind of arranging when I read this, it doesn't sound like Juno is arranging a marriage at all. She's arranging a tryst between lovers, which would seem to fall much more under the domain of what Venus would do.
Exactly.
So I think this is Virgil keeping us off balance.
Correct. And later Aeneas will claim, this was no marriage. We didn't get married.
Right.
It took place in a cave.
Right.
There was no cake. Come on. Nobody caught a bouquet.
Right.
Dido sticks to the claim that, well, yes, it was a marriage, right? Mm-hmm. The goddess was there. The torches were lit. So what if it took place in a cave? You're abandoning me.
Yes, exactly right. I'd like to maybe just take a slight detour here.
Okay.
Because this whole concept of how a Roman audience would have seen love or understand kind of the romance of this, as opposed to how a modern audience would. I find that kind of very interesting. And so, on the one hand, we have in this book or in this epic, the very religiously correct themes. Dido has made these vows that she's never going to betray the memory of her husband.
Right.
But at the same time, Virgil is the same poet who is famously associated with the phrase "omnia vincit amor,"
right.
Love conquers all.
Right.
And so I thought that you will hear that phrase as kind of as an axiom, as kind of a proverb, but it strikes me as a very Disney way of using it in the modern parlance. Right?
I see what you're saying.
Right, but if
it doesn't mean love wins in the end.
Right. But that's how people
Correct.
take it. Right.
Love as a good, a completely good and not dangerous thing that brings happy endings.
Yes. So I went back to where that phrase comes from, and it comes from one of Virgil's eclogues, and it involves the words are spoken by one Gallus, he's lying dying of love sickness because his love Lycoris in the poem has cheated on him or left him.
Right.
And Apollo comes from him and says, "Hey, what's your problem?" And it's very clear that when Gallus says, "Love conquers all things," he's not saying it in that kind of Disney princess kind of way. It's Apollo that comes to him and basically says, "This is part of your insanity.
Right.
You're crazy." Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was really interesting. In Virgil's context, it almost means the opposite.
I think that the key here is that the verb winkit, if I can get a little philological.
Please do.
I promised pedantry. The verb winko winkere, right? In English, the word conquer is not always bad. It's morally neutral, right? You can say, I conquered Mount Everest. You can say, I conquered this room. So it's broader, but the Latin verb winko winkere has more of a sense of domination to it than the English word conquer.
Yes.
So it's in some ways a mistranslation. Love doesn't conquer everything. Love you could say almost brutalizes or crushes.
Yeah.
It crushes everything. Now I know kids today are saying, how'd your test go? I crushed it.
Yes.
Right? I killed it. It strikes me as odd, all these violent metaphors for really mundane things.
Right.
Right? Did you get the table cleaned? I killed it.
I crushed it.
Exactly. Hold on now. But in any event, I think that's the key. And you're right. Winkit does not mean it overcomes so that there's a goodness that pervades.
Yeah.
It's not like that.
Yeah, so what would if it were to mean love, conquers all things in the way that we use it. What word would you substitute there?
It would have something to do with to placate or to mollify, like placo placare,
right?
Brings peace to, makes peaceful, right?
Yeah.
The omnia
yeah.
Would be something omnia placat amor.
Right.
Love calms everybody down. It brings happiness, or something like a later verb beatifico, right? It makes happy.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Right.
But not winko winkere, because the primary context for that is the military, of course. And then it extends into other things, right? But love doesn't conquer all things in the same way love does conquer all things in the same way that the Romans destroyed Carthage.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
When they wrecked it in 146.
Right. So when Apollo comes to Gallus after he says this and basically says, what are you doing? Why are you acting so madly? It makes perfect sense with that Roman concept of winko.
He's saying, I can't resist love. Look what love did to me.
Right.
Basically the idea.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me, I think that even perhaps the most famous pithy Roman phrase, carpe diem,
right?
Which most people say, what does that mean? Let's say seize the day,
right.
But carpo is really more kind of like pluck, right? It's more kind of it's like a gentle agricultural metaphor,
right?
You're not grabbing that grape, right? You were just gently removing it from the vine,
what you're saying, right?
And so that's also, I think, a really quite bad mistranslation of carpe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm with you totally.
Okay.
I was trying to think of what the Epicurean original is. Lathabiosas, something like that. Live casually. Something like that. I think that's what it is. But I agree. Seize the day doesn't capture it.
It doesn't. All right. Well, let's get back to the Aeneid here.
Okay.
So so Virgil gives us a Dido who is. She's haunted by her vow. She doesn't want to forsake her husband, but she's also really moved by this new guy. Her sister Anna has basically told her, "No, hey, listen, go for it. What do the dead care about these kinds of things?"
Exactly.
And then we get this very famous simile where Virgil likens her love or lust or whatever's going on right now to a kind of madness, and she likens Dido herself to a wounded animal.
That's right. She's like a doe who has been shot by a Cretan hunter deep in the woods on the island of Crete. She is unwary. The arrow lodges. The shepherd or the hunter has no idea that he's actually struck the creature, But the creature then goes raving through the forest, through the Dictaean forest, and that lethal shaft clings in her flank.
Yeah.
This is Dido, right?
Right.
Love is a wound. It's a passion. And one of the good interpretations of Virgil's take on love is that, like Ovid, love is something from which you are to be cured.
Yeah.
Both the Stoics and the Epicureans had a view of how to, heal the disease of love. Mm-hmm. They differed in their prescription, you might say, but they both thought of love as something that was really dangerous, and you didn't want to always have it.
Yeah.
You wanted to try to get out of it if you could.
Right. I'm sure part of that is related to, a kind of a tenor of Stoicism, too, mm-hmm. right? You want to be the master of your passion.
Yes, love takes over. You can't do what you want to do.
Exactly.
You're a hostage to your own emotions.
Exactly. I like the detail in the simile where she's shot by a shepherd who has no idea where the arrow has landed. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, that's perfect for the passivity of Aeneas, right?
Correct.
In some ways, he doesn't even know that he's shot an arrow.
And isn't this how love sometimes works? In truth, someone is in love with another person, and the other person has no idea
exactly
that
right.
it has taken place.
Right, and
it may be very shallow, but it may not be based on friendship and shared interests. It could just be looks or a casual glance or a stray word or something.
Right.
But for the person who's experiencing that passion, it can be very strong.
Exactly.
Even if the other person is completely unaware.
I think it's like anybody who's gone to high school
I was thinking.
would read this and say, I know what that's about.
Exactly.
Exactly. Either themselves or they've seen their friends go through it.
Right.
Right. So there's something kind of...
Grab your friend by the shoulders. What are you thinking?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Right. Or
she looked at me, so
I passed her the note that said, "Do you like me? Check yes or no." Right. So I think there's something universal here. I think everybody recognizes that, and I think that's probably why Book 4 gets the excerpt.
You're right.
In all the anthologies. Yeah.
Not to go too deep, but she saved a place in line for you, right? Oh, it's destiny. We're supposed to get married.
Exactly right. You see the future in one grand vision.
Saved a spot for me in the lunch line. Yeah. But it's Ovidian also, right? I mean, this is some of your notes here, which I think are very on point. In what sense would you say that this simile is like Ovid?
Well, her being shot by the arrow, I think I think that certainly an original audience could not have missed the metaphor with Cupid, right? And it reminds me of the famous Apollo and Daphne episode, which we've talked about on the show. And when Cupid has his way, Cupid gets what he wants, right, and so that raises question. I mean, does Dido really have any choice here? Does this simile seem to suggest that she's shot by the sharp gold-tipped arrow? Well,
she's still a willing participant in what fate does.
Yeah.
That's my conclusion.
I guess so, right?
You don't have to believe it, but
yeah. Well, I mean, you see that a lot in Homer as well,
right?
That kind of the double causation,
right? The gods drive what the people want to do,
right? Fate, this idea also, Aeneas is going to wind up in Italy. That's fate. Mm-hmm. But what happens between point A and point B? There's a lot of free will that can take place, right? So I think a lot of that kind of falls into that same camp here,
because there are the fates in the El Camino.
That's right. Yeah.
Rolling around.
That's right. Yeah,
deciding what people are going to do.
Exactly.
So as we keep an eye on the clock here and we start to wind down to the inevitable end of this episode, we have a major scene shift.
We do. The camera swoops up to Olympus.
Exactly, to snowy Olympus, where Juno approaches Venus and seeks a truce.
She does, right. And so this reminded me too, I think, another slight Homeric nod. This kind of reminded me of Hera approaching Aphrodite in Book 14 of the Iliad,
for sure,
basically saying, "Listen, can I become you for the day?"
Right.
And so audiences have seen this before. Now it's a very different kind of scene, but just that the setup,
right,
I think would have kind of rung some Homeric bells.
Should we try that someday?
What's that?
That when we do this podcast, we switch roles. I become the fun-loving pop culture maven, good cop, and you become the grumpy, pedantic bad cop.
That's episode 100. Maybe that's what we can do. Yeah, it's coming up.
Can you do an impersonation?
I'll have to work on it in the mirror. Yeah. So the scene shifts, and so Juno says to Venus, "Okay, can we come to some kind of agreement here? You want to read a little Latin?
I do. Yeah. Yes. Egregiam. Let's see. I should start over. This is line 93 for those of you playing the home game. Mm-hmm. Line 93, Book 4. Egregiam vero laudet spoli ampla refertis. Tuque puerque tu us magnet memorabile numen, Unadolo di wum si femina victa duordrest, nec mareo falit veritam te moenia nostra, suspectas habevisidemos Carthaginis altae, sed quis erdrit modus aut quo nunc certamina tanto?
Wonderful.
Thank you.
As always.
Can you give us some of the Lombardo translation?
Yeah, Lombardo
there?
says, so again, this is Juno speaking. An outstanding victory. What a memorable display of divine power by you and your little boy. That's her Cupid. Two devious deities laying low a single woman. Your fear of Carthage and your suspicion of its noble houses hardly escapes me, my dear. But to what purpose? Why are we at odds? Why not instead work out a lasting peace sealed with a royal marriage? There's that word. You have what you want. Dido burning with love, her very bones inflamed. I propose, therefore, that we rule this people jointly, with equal authority. Dido can submit to a Trojan husband, with Carthage as her dowry. Now, here too, I mean, Juno she knows the fate.
Correct.
Or she knows what must happen. What is she doing here?
She's still going to try to cheat the fates.
So
you got to try, because that's her character.
Again, is it that point between? Is that space between point A and point B? So I'm just going to drag it out.
Exactly.
So I know point B is coming, but at least I can push it into the future.
Right. It's like in a sporting event.
Okay.
You watch a sporting event, played a sporting event, and it's very lopsided. One team is obviously going to win. There's not time left. There's no way. Right?
Yeah.
The Detroit Bulls are beating the Chicago Pistons by 100 to 75, and there's 30 seconds on the clock.
Yeah.
If you're a professional like Juno is, you play out those 30 seconds. You try to score some buckets.
Right.
It's always a little disappointing, isn't it?
It is.
When they kneel down for the last 20 plays during a football game.
It's true.
Come on, you're getting paid millions of dollars. Play it out.
It's a part of the game that my dad always called garbage time.
That's right.
It's just nothing but garbage time.
Right.
Right. So yeah,
And
this
so
is garbage time.
I think that's what Juno's doing. She knows she's beaten, but she's a professional, so she's not going to take a knee and count down the clock. She's going to work it out.
Right. And she I think it's also that she says, well, if I can't ultimately win, at least I'm going to embarrass my rival.
Exactly. The other really interesting thing about this is the person who proposes the compromise is always the weaker party. Venus has the upper hand. Juno is the one who comes to her and says, hey, let's work this out. Well, you know that she's the weaker party.
Right. Yeah, that's just a basic rule of negotiation.
That's right.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
negotiations. Venus suspects a ploy, and what about fate? Does he want a union of Tyrians and Trojans?
Yeah, Jupiter here comes off. And we'll probably get to this in the next episode. But he's like the lazy uncle on the couch who just doesn't really want to be bothered by this. And somebody wakes him up and says, what's going on?
Yeah, work it out.
Then Mercury, go fix this.
Exactly. Right? We were gonna, Uncle Joe, we were gonna order pizza. Should we go? You guys just here's my wallet. Figure it out.
Just do it.
Exactly. Doesn't have to be a process.
Right.
Get in there and take care of your business.
Right. So Venus says, she kind of plays along, right? And then, but she says, well, how is this going to work? And Juno says, I've got it all planned.
Right.
And she says, there's these, the Tyrians and the Trojans are going on this big hunt, as you do.
Right.
The next day, and she's going to...
As aristocrats do. That's what they do for sport.
Like the fox hunt.
They hunt.
The English, right?
That's right. You've watched Downton Abbey.
No, I haven't.
You've never watched any Downton Abbey?
I think I tried one episode and said, this is not for me.
I'm surprised you didn't ask me because it's pop culture and here I could score some points.
That's right.
In any event, This is like the Downton Abbey. They're going on the big fox hunt.
The big fox hunt. And so Juno says, when that happens, I'm going to arrange for a big storm, and it's going to separate people, and it's going to drive these two young crazy kids into a cave.
That's right.
And that's where the marriage will be solidified.
And this is like a Hollywood or Disney moment.
It is. This is very Disney.
Exactly, because you have Dido and Aeneas walking backward into the cave, and they bump into each other and turn around with surprise.
Right.
What are you doing here?
The violins swell.
That's right.
They're both soaking wet.
And they look at each other's eyes.
and it's kismet. It's very, very Disney at this point. And I think that's why a lot of people love this scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Jeff, we should actually wrap it up before it gets a little Loveboat here, don't you think?
It's getting a little Loveboaty.
I think so, too.
Yes, right. But come aboard. We're expecting you. Right? But I think we got to leave this. This is the cliffhanger.
Okay.
We got the two young kids in the cave.
Can we call it the cave hanger?
The cave hanger.
It's a cave hanger.
It's a cave hanger.
Is a real wedding going to be transacted?
We don't know. Is it a marriage? Who gets to decide, right?
Is there going to be more of a thing where there's Doc and Isaac and Gopher?
I mean, you think the whole Loveboat crew is going to show up?
Julie and Captain Stubing.
So Juno is our Captain Stubing here, right? Trying to drive the whole thing,
right.
Steering the whole thing, right?
Yep.
Right. Maybe in the next episode we can find corollaries for each of the Loveboat characters.
How did that guy drive the boat if he was always arranging romances?
That guy was talented, right? He was always at the captain's table. Oh man, that guy was everywhere.
Gavin MacLeod, is that his name?
That is his name, right?
And you said I don't know anything about pop culture.
You know your Loveboat. We're going to test this next time.
All right.
But we're going to leave that there.
Okay.
And we'll talk about marriage. What does it mean? Who's deciding if this is a marriage or not, and how that really drives a wedge into the whole machine here.
So we got to wrap it up, don't we?
We do. We got to get out of here.
We haven't talked about the Moss method for Greek. We haven't talked about my Latin courses. You've been strangely yet predictably derelict in asking me about those things.
Well, can we get into those things? You seem a little put off.
More than a little.
Okay, right. Well, take some time and tell us about those, Dave.
Oh, would you like me to?
Please do.
Yes, if you're interested in taking your Greek from nothing to a lot.
No, that's not how it goes.
No, how does it go?
It goes from neophyte to erudite.
Yes. Then you should sign up for my course, Moss Method for Greek. Go to Moss Method, check out my free instruction, and for $325, you can take Module 1, 40 video lessons, 40 assignments, all of which I grade, and quizzes, exams, and especially the office hours.
What's that all about? They get to hang out with you, right?
Yes, once per week we meet and we talk Greek, we read Greek, we study Greek every Friday. Currently, it's usually about 10 a.m. on Friday. I have to move it around a little bit, but it'll be 10 a.m. tomorrow, and that's what we're going to do.
So they have direct connection with you, but they also get to meet people
students
from around the world?
Yes, we got folks in California joining, and New York, and Ireland, and Australia, and it's really just all over.
Fantastic.
It's a lot of fun.
So mossmethod.com.
That's correct.
You can check out. There's lots of free stuff they can look at, and that's where they can sign up for Module 1.
That's right. I've been teaching and studying Greek for... it's actually 30 years this year. Wow. I started in 1992 learning Greek.
That's an anniversary.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
So everything I've learned about Greek, I have put into this course. I don't give it to you all at once, but it's virtually all there.
Fantastic. Now you also teach Latin.
Yes, I do. This is the LLPSI, the Lingua Latina Per Se Illustrata. Go to latinperdiem.com/LLPSI, and you can sign up for that course. It includes lots of great stuff, including an audio recording of the Familia Romana book, chapters 1 through 9, read by myself. If you just want to listen to that, it's a really high-quality audio recording that I put together with Mishka's help. That's a great way to learn Latin, but you also get weekly office hours, more than 21 instructional videos where I'm teaching real-life students. I think it's a real bargain, $199. You can't get on the Loveboat for $199.
That is for sure. Not even back in 1977.
No way.
No way. Right.
But Jeff, we have some people to thank.
We do. Thanks as always to Mishka, who puts this together, makes us sound better than we are. Thanks to Scott Van Zen and Ken Tamplin for the great music you hear throughout in the beginning and at the end. Is there anybody else to thank? Any other personal?
I don't think we need to thank Grant Hayden, who gave us that wonderful shout out.
He's raised the bar.
He has raised the bar right there at the beginning, yeah. And if any of y'all would like shout outs, send them along. We'd like to, give you 3, 4, 5 minutes of a little bit of fame. We'd also like to make fun of you, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you can write to jeff@adnauseam.com. Don't forget the V.
Or to dave@adnauseam.com. Also, again, don't forget the V.
Yes. And coming up next week,
more Aeneid book 4.
Yes, part 2.
It gets better.
It does. Oh, it gets so rich.
Yep.
And Jeff, I think you have the gustatory parting shot this week.
I do?
Yes,
is it
you
me?
do.
Okay.
It is you. And you're probably going to find it a little lackluster. I queued this up for you. I thought I'd help in a tiny way. Maybe there's a little bit of an understatement there. Maybe we can make some frivolity from it. What do you think?
Oh, or we can just kind of let it kind of hang there and echo.
Like a matzo ball?
Like a matzo ball right out there. So this is a Spanish proverb.
That's what I'm told.
Translated into English here.
Now, we should maybe tell the audience that Jeff has been hot stepping it for several months now.
I've been trying to...
This guy is racking up the steps on his pedometer.
I am?
We're talking about hundreds of thousands of steps per month.
That's right.
The guy's getting fit. He is, when we go back on the video edition, you're hardly going to recognize him. He's ripped now.
Totally ripped, right. But yes, I have been trying to increase my stuff, trying to get that at least 10,000 a day. And you're kind of on the bandwagon too.
I've been
you've turned this into a competition.
I've been doing a lot of walking. I love to compete.
Yes, I know you do.
Yes, and I think you beat me last month with your total number of steps.
Yeah, you're still not happy about it.
Well, it's because the academic pastoral life is so healthy, all that sitting and reading. I thought I might as well just walk a little bit.
Right.
So the proverb is in that vein.
Yes, it is. And the proverb goes something like this: with bread and wine, you can walk your road.
Yeah, that's nice.
So next time I head out, I want to have a bottle in one hand and a loaf in the other.
Under your other arm?
Yeah.
Let's just keep the wine out of the shoes, because I think you can't walk your road that way.
No.
It'd be deeply uncomfortable.
That would be awful.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.